Of sight cleared, Malcolm was stumbling backward, blood spreading across his chest. He tried to stay on his feet, tried to stand, but two more men rushed the stage with pistols, firing, firing, firing. 16 bullets found Malcolm X. He fell. And Bumpy Johnson, the man who'd stopped Dutch Schwartz, who'd faced down the Italian mafia, who'd killed without hesitation for 30 years, stood frozen, gun in hand, unable to save the one man who mattered most. The ballroom erupted, screaming, crying, people diving under tables.
Chairs, mothers throwing themselves over children. Thomas Hagen turned and ran for the exit, shotgun still in his hands, smoke still rising from the barrel. Something inside Bumpy snapped. Not the explosive kind, the cold kind, the lethal kind. He moved fast, smooth, predatory. He couldn't fire his gun. Too many people in the way, panic everywhere. One shot and innocent people die in the crossfire. So Bumpy ran, closing the distance. 15 feet, 10, 5. Hagen was at the exit door, reaching for the handle. 30 seconds from freedom. Bumpy lunged low, swept his leg forward, hooked Hagen's ankle with perfect precision. Hagen's momentum carried him forward, but his feet went backward. He crashed face first onto the polished ballroom floor. The shotgun flew from his hands, spinning across the wood. Bumpy kicked it hard, sent it sliding under a row of overturned chairs. Gone. Hagen scrambled to his knees, wild-eyed, reaching for the pistol in his waistband. Bumpy grabbed his wrist, twisted. The small revolver clattered away. Then, Bumpy did something unexpected. He didn't kill Hagen, didn't beat him, didn't pull his own gun. Bumpy had a reason for not pulling that trigger. It wasn't mercy. It was never mercy. If he fired, he'd be the only man found with a smoking gun when the cops arrived. It would turn a martyrdom into a gangland shootout. Bumpy couldn't do that to Malcolm's legacy. More importantly, dead men don't talk. Hagen needed to talk. He needed to say who gave the order, who funded it, who sanctioned it, and most of all, this man took Malcolm from the people, so Bumpy was going to give him back to the people. He grabbed Hagen by the collar, lifted him halfway up, then shoved him backward into the surging crowd. 20 men rushed forward. They just watched Malcolm X get murdered, watched him fall, and now the killer was right there. A fist connected with Hagen's jaw, then another, then 5 more hands, grabbing, pulling, beating. Bumpy stepped back. Let them have him. Let them deliver the justice the courts couldn't. He leaned close to the mob, voice low but carrying. Don't let him breathe. Don't let him run. Make him answer for what he did. The crowd understood. They pinned Hagen to the floor, held him down like a wild animal. Police sirens wailed outside, getting closer. Bumpy Johnson walked calmly toward the side exit. Through the chaos, through the crying, through the smoke still hanging in the air. By the time police flooded through the front doors, Bumpy was 3 blocks away, disappearing into Harlem's streets like he'd never been there at all. Behind him, Thomas Hagen was on the ground, bleeding, beaten, but alive. Alive to stand trial, alive to rot in prison, alive to spend every day for the rest of his life knowing he failed,
knowing Malcolm X died standing, knowing Harlem never forgets. Malcolm X was pronounced dead at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital at 3:30 p.m. 16 gunshot wounds. 39 years old. Gone. Bumpy didn't go to the hospital. Couldn't. Too many cops. Too many questions. Too much attention. Instead, he went to a place he hadn't visited in years. St. Philip's Church. Small, quiet, empty on the Sunday evening. He sat in the last pew, alone, still wearing his blood-stained jacket. Malcolm's blood. The old priest, Father Callahan, found him there an hour later. "You don't come here," the priest said softly. "No, but you're here now." Bumpy didn't answer, just stared at the cross hanging above the altar. The silence, the empty space. "I was 10 feet away," Bumpy finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I had my gun out. I could have stopped it, but there was a little girl, 6 years old, right in the line of fire." Father Callahan sat down in the pew in front of him, turned to face Bumpy. "So, you chose the child's life over Malcolm's?" "Malcolm chose it." Bumpy's voice cracked. "He looked at me, saw my gun, and he shook his head, told me to let him go. Then you gave him what he wanted? I gave him death." Bumpy's hands clenched into fists. "I could have moved, could have found another angle. I could have done something, but I froze, and I watched him die." The priest was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Malcolm X lived his entire life preparing to die for his cause. You didn't take that from him. You honored it. It doesn't bring him back." "No, but Malcolm knew what he was choosing. He chose integrity over survival. He chose to die standing rather than live on his knees. Not many men have that courage." Bumpy stood up, buttoned his jacket over the bloodstains. Hagen's alive. The crowd beaten. "Him, but he'll live to stand trial. And the others?" Bumpy's expression went cold. "There were 3 shooters. Hagen's in custody. The other 2 ran. Will they escape?" "No." Bumpy's voice was ice. "They won't." Father Callahan understood. "Vengeance won't heal this wound." "Maybe not." Bumpy turned toward the door. "But it's all I have left to give him." Malcolm X's funeral was held on February 27th at Faith Temple Church of God in Christ. 3,000 people packed inside. Thousands more lined the streets of Harlem. Bumpy Johnson stood in the back, not with dignitaries, not with family, just against the wall, watching. Betty Shabazz, Malcolm's widow, saw him. Their eyes met across the crowded church. She nodded once, small, sad, acknowledging. She knew. She knew Bumpy had been there. She knew he'd tried. She knew Thomas Hagen was in custody because Bumpy made sure he couldn't run. After the service, Bumpy walked alone to Ferncliff Cemetery, where Malcolm would be buried. He stood at the edge of the open grave, looking down at the casket. From his pocket, he pulled out something small, his straight razor, the one he'd carried for 30 years,
The one that made men in Harlem cross the street when they saw him coming. The symbol of his power, his survival, his code. He placed it gently on the coffin lid. "You died standing," Bumpy said quietly, "just like you wanted. But the men who killed you, they're going to die scared. That's my promise." And Bumpy Johnson kept that promise. Within 6 months, the other 2 shooters, the ones who'd escaped that day, were found not by police, by Harlem, by Bumpy's network. They never stood trial. They just disappeared. The history books don't mention that part. The history books say Thomas Hagen was convicted and the other 2 escaped justice. But ask anyone who lived in Harlem in 1965. They'll tell you different. Bumpy Johnson died in 1968, 3 years after Malcolm. Heart attack at Wells Restaurant in Harlem. No violence, no shootout. Just an old warrior's heart, finally given out. At his funeral, someone asked one of Bumpy's oldest friends, what was Bumpy's greatest moment? The friend thought for a long time, then said, February 21st, 1965, when he sat in that ballroom with his gun drawn and respected Malcolm's choice, even though it killed him inside. That's when Bumpy proved he wasn't just a gangster. He was a man of honor. Bumpy Johnson had killed for money, for power, for respect, for survival. But on that Sunday afternoon, he chose not to kill, chose to honor a friend's wish, chose to let Malcolm X die standing with dignity on his own terms. That's not in the history books, but it should be, because sometimes the hardest thing a man with a gun can do is not pull the trigger. Sometimes the bravest thing a killer can do is let someone die. Malcolm X died standing, and Bumpy Johnson made sure the world remembered that. If this story of honor, sacrifice, and impossible choices moved you, hit that subscribe button and smash